She had the greatest voice God ever gave a human being, but the woman behind that voice was never truly allowed to be herself. Not by her label, not by her family, and not by the industry that built its entire empire on her name. And what they took from her in exchange for that fame is the part of this story that has never been told the way it deserves to be told. Stay till the end, because my honest take on who was really responsible might genuinely surprise you. Whitney Elizabeth Houston was born on August 9, 1963 in Newark, New Jersey. And if you grew up listening to her, you probably had no idea how much that city shaped her. Her mother was gospel legend Cissy Houston, her godmother was Aretha Franklin, and her cousin was Dionne Warwick. She didn't just grow up around music, she grew up inside it, surrounded by women who understood what it meant to pour your whole soul into a song. But Newark in the 1960s was tough, and even with all that extraordinary family around her, Whitney Houston grew up understanding early that the world could be both magical and deeply unforgiving at the same time. She was 17 years old, singing background for her mother at a small club in New York called Sweetwater's, when Clive Davis walked through the door. He heard 2 bars of her voice, and that was it. He knew. He signed her almost immediately, and for a 17-year-old girl from Newark, that must have felt like the entire world opening up at once. But what nobody told her, what nobody warned her about, was that the contract she signed that night wasn't just for her voice. It was for everything. Her image, her wardrobe, her persona, and who she was allowed to be in public. And that one quiet detail buried in the fine print of a music contract is where this story really begins. An insider who worked closely with her told People magazine something that stopped me cold when I first read it. They said she had to do what Clive said, wear what he said, sing what he wanted her to sing, and act like a goody two-shoes when she was really a down-and-dirty girl from Jersey. And Whitney deeply resented that. A family friend went even further, revealing that she turned to drugs as her only rebellion. The one part of herself that nobody could script, control, or approve. Think about what that means. The greatest voice of a generation found her only freedom in the one thing that was destroying her. And then there was Robyn Crawford, Whitney's best friend since high school, the person who knew every version of her and loved all of them completely. In her own memoir, Robyn confirmed what many had quietly suspected for years, that they were romantically involved in the early 1980s, deeply connected in a way that Whitney never publicly acknowledged. But when the Clive Davis machine began shaping Whitney's image, the message from the label was clear. Robyn had to go. Bobby Brown said it himself in his memoir, and this is the line I want you to really hear. They couldn't let Whitney live the life she wanted to live. They insisted she be someone she wasn't, and that's why they wanted Robyn out. She was forced to choose between the person who truly knew her and the career that was already changing the world. She met Bobby Brown at the Soul Train Music Awards in 1989, and you have to understand what Bobby represented to Whitney in that moment. He was raw, unfiltered, completely unapologetic. Everything the controlled world of Clive Davis was not. They married in 1992, and their 14-year marriage survived hard partying, infidelity, and allegations of physical abuse that Whitney herself described to Oprah in 2009. She sat across from Oprah and said Bobby spit in her face, that she was horrified, that she was so deeply hurt. And you could see in her eyes that years later, she still was. But here is what Bobby said that nobody talks about enough. He said if Robyn had been accepted into Whitney's life, Whitney would still be alive today. She didn't have close friends with her anymore. And when you understand everything that came before, that line hits completely differently. In 2000, Clive Davis was ousted from Arista Records, and Whitney lost the one person who, for better or worse, had always been the gravitational center of her professional life. Her father died in 2003, and the reality show Being Bobby Brown in 2005 brought their private chaos into every living room in America, a Whitney the world barely recognized, unguarded and unraveling, while the greatest voice of a generation quietly slipped further away. They divorced in 2007, and what happened next is the part of this story that breaks my heart the most. Here is my honest take on all of it. Whitney Houston was not destroyed by Bobby Brown, and she was not destroyed by drugs. She was destroyed by a system that decided at 17 years old who she was allowed to be, stripped away the person who loved her most completely, and then profited from her greatness while she quietly disappeared. The music industry consumed Whitney Houston, and not one person who benefited from her voice was ever truly held accountable for what their control cost her. Before I give you my final verdict on who I believe carries the most responsibility for what happened to Whitney, there is one more chapter to this story that changes everything, and it involves the night she died, a bathtub in Beverly Hills, and a question that has never been fully answered. That chapter is part 2. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss it. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Do you think the music industry was responsible for what happened to Whitney Houston, or do you place that responsibility somewhere else? Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the tea. New videos every single day on the Daily Gossip Vault. The tea has been spilled and the vault is now closed. See you tomorrow.